This episode is sponsored by Launch. Are you an insurance agent that is tired of quoting business to try and find a better premium to win new deals? Are you looking for a way to differentiate and stand out from your competition? Well, look no further than Launch. Launch is an industry-leading software platform that gives you pre-built assessments that you can walk through with your prospect. Launch automatically calculates your prospect's risk score, and this allows you to show your prospect the areas you can fix to negotiate better premium and coverage with underwriters. Offer more value to your clients, turn missed sales into closed business, and most of all, become a better advisor to your clients. Visit getlaunch.io today to get more information on how you can use Launch to win more BORs starting right now. That's getlaunch.io to learn more.
Welcome to the Getting Past the Premium podcast, where we focus on breaking down risk management problems bit by bit until we find a solution. If you would like to discuss anything you hear on GPP with us, please reach out using the links in the description. Enjoy today's episode.
All right, Jelani, thank you for hopping on Getting Past the Premium, and look forward to our conversation today.
Absolutely. Very excited to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. And we've got our guest host, Mr. Ben Woods, joining us today as well. So,
Hey, Jelani. Nice to see you, bud.
Yes, likewise.
yeah, well, if you wouldn't mind, just kind of bring us up to speed on what you're doing and a little bit about yourself, and we'll hop in.
Absolutely. So I know I made the joke earlier when we had first connected, that I got 10 toes to the ground and I get to talk about insurance. But listen, I'm a huge passionate person when it comes to all things insurance. I've been in the industry for the past 9 years. I started my career out as a broker at Marsh in their leadership development program. Spent 4 years there working on a variety of just large, complex casualty programs for Fortune 500s. Ended up leaving to go get my MBA full time, and then transitioned over to the investment banking side of the house, covering insurance companies. So worked on a lot of the mergers and acquisitions roll-ups that you see across some of these large agencies across the country, as well as a couple of IPOs and other capital raises for large insurance companies, and spent about 8 months at a large insurtech company, helping them build out their capacity on the MGA side. So really like insurance. There's definitely a common thread with everything that I'm doing. And I'd say about a year and a half ago, I stumbled upon this thing called the talent gap that a lot of folks in our industry have been kind of ringing the bell on, just to get everyone up to speed. We can kind of take it through the numbers in terms of the number of folks that are expected to hit retirement age. But, according to a variety of different data sources, we've got about 50% of our industry that's about to hit retirement age or retire within the next 5 to 10 years, which is leaving a huge shortage of talent within the millennial, Gen X, millennial, Gen Z, and even up to the Gen X generation as well. So, what we ultimately do as a company here at Safari is that we look to build a new pipeline of talent into the insurance industry by partnering with 2-year and 4-year institutions, as well as the Department of Defense with their Skill Bridge program. So we're really just looking to build new pipelines of talent into our industry, and we also help get those folks trained up when they actually are placed into roles. So we handle both the talent acquisition as well as talent development, but ultimately our goal as an organization is to really help solve the talent shortage that our industry is faced with.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm super excited to kind of dive into this conversation. In the show before the show, we were chatting a little bit about even our personal struggles trying to find, talent to come in and join, and it doesn't seem to be getting any easier. So, do you think that the M&A that's going on in the industry, I mean, you've got multiple pressure points, right? You've got not only the demographic piece that you rattled off, which 100% makes sense. You've also got all the M&A in the industry that is then, gobbling up talent and whatnot. Like, where do you see this thing headed in terms of being able to, get past this hump and get people interested in this industry and be wanting to join and know the impact that they can make?
Yeah, I think I think a lot about like the second part of your question, which is just building interest in the world of insurance. I think that there's a huge knowledge gap that currently exists between what we actually do as an industry and what people think we do. I think that there's a very antiquated view of what we do, and I make the expression that, like, what was it, like Willie Loman back in like the Death of a Salesman days that like we all know about. I think that everyone still generally thinks that that's what we do as an industry, particularly the young talent that we're looking to recruit. So I think that that's a huge challenge that our industry has, which is that we have a marketing and a knowledge gap problem. I also think that as we kind of think about why there aren't that many students that are interested in pursuing careers in the insurance industry, it's a lack of awareness. And that's a structural issue, right? So, particularly on 2- and 4-year campuses, you can go study finance, you can go study accounting, you can go study, any of those types of paths, which have similarly sized populations of folks in terms of workers within those industries. Like the finance industry is very similar to insurance in terms of the amount of people that it employs, and the same thing on the accounting side. But they have a scalable platform that they can recruit students who have the foundational knowledge to be able to do that job on every single campus in our country. Now, compare that to insurance. You can only really study risk management and insurance at so many different institutions, right? We know that you can go to Drake, or you can go to St. John's or Temple or UGA, but there are likely less than 100 RMI programs across the country. So now, as we kind of think about the structural considerations, that's going to make it really hard for our industry to be able to recruit, because there's not that many places or not that many institutions where there's even awareness of insurance as a career path. So I think that we're dealing with, we're dealing with challenges across the spectrum. I think in terms of what that's looking like for, at least on the traditional side, that's going to continue to challenge us. I think that mergers and acquisitions, and particularly as you start to look at what's going on at the large agency level, right? Like your Hub Internationals, your Acrisures, your Assured Partners, which are basically these aggregated platforms of agencies that are going out and scooping up all of these local agencies. I think that they're going to be very challenged because they now have integration issues, right? Where they're going out and they're acquiring all these agencies and maybe 4th, 5th, or 6th tier markets across the country, and they don't have a scalable pipeline to be able to recruit into these organizations, right? So I think that that's going to continue to be a challenge. I do think, though, that there are a lot of positive tailwinds that our industry is currently has in its favor, right? I think that there are a lot of digital tools that are decreasing a lot of the monotonous tasks that would typically go to a CSR, which, I think that was the typical path, right? Like you would come in as a CSR and you kind of work your way up, you get licensed after a couple of years. And, that was kind of the pathway to being a producer, right? And I think that in itself could actually end up being a challenge where you're going to have to go out and recruit folks without necessarily taking them through a traditional type of CSR role. But I think that digitization will definitely be a big tailwind for our industry to kind of decrease the need for human capital to an extent. But I also think things like InsurTech are going to continue to make our industry that much more attractive to folks, right? So, I think that there are competing challenges across the aisle that I think our industry will need to really be cognizant of. But, ultimately, this demographic shift is not easing up anytime soon. And I think that it's something that we made the mistake back in the 90s and the 2000s, which was the first time that we thought that we could essentially use technology to replace human capital. And while I think that we might be in the 2.0 version of that, that ultimately led to the talent gap that we have today. So now we kind of need to reverse course, double down on our talent investments, and really use this as an opportunity to bring in that next generation of talent.
Yeah.
Well said.
Yeah, for sure. I was thinking about when you were talking about the accountants, right? And the resources that we have as a country that helps, craft a path to be in the accounting industry. I feel like they're facing some of the similar challenges that we are. From a commoditization perspective. You've got like processing a tax return isn't a value add anymore. And it's very similar to some of the parallels that we're dealing with in the risk management space, where what used to be a value prop, right? Like printing out a policy and driving it to your customer and, making sure that they have access to their ID cards instantly and certs and, all of these things that we traditionally would
shudder
of a value prop, right? It's crazy. Is kind of what is happening in the accounting industry, where they're saying, hey, no, we're not going to, our value prop isn't processing tax returns, and it's centered more on the advice side of things. Exactly. And that's where those conversations are happening. Is that where we're struggling a little bit? In terms of our industry, is it not only, again, the issues that you're talking about, but the industry shifting as well from a value prop standpoint, from being an expert in, deep policy language to being more of what we would consider like a strategic advisor type at the risk management level. And finding those people that are able to just have crazy high business acumen, talk about risk across the organization, and whatnot. Like, what are you seeing from that perspective in terms of the shift and how that's changing, trying to find the right person to facilitate that advisory role?
Absolutely. I think that ultimately, since a lot of these roles are shifting to where, anyone that gets brought in to work at, whether it's your local agency or any of the large players too, you kind of need to have that digital acumen in order to be able to work with the tools that you're currently provided with and really use that as a catalyst to be able to do your job more efficiently. I think ultimately, though, the challenge that we're going to continue to face as an industry is, since that a lot of what you were talking about there, Ryan, around commoditization and standardization is going to really kind of be felt, I feel like, at your personal lines type of things, right? Like your auto, your homeowners, your renters, like those types of simple-ish types of policies where you kind of can bring a robot in to kind of automate a lot of those processes, but you still need a human component of it from a consultative perspective to be able to execute on that. So, I think that that's something that to me, at least, I think that can be a tool that we can use to recruit more people, right? Where the role that you're going to be doing that you used to do as a CSR and you started to talk about doing certs, ID cards, like those are the types of things that just gave me the most frustration in my job. Like everyone from your local mom and pop agency up to the Marshes of the world, like that's how you start your career, right? You're doing the COIs, you're doing your ID cards, and that was the unglamorous part of the job. But the glamorous part was the consultative work that you're talking about, right? Having the opportunity to work on accounts like the NFL or Amazon or anything like that, right? Where you have the opportunity to actually think and provide value-added advice. I think that those are the types of folks that that is the value prop that we need to start sending out to the folks that we're looking to recruit, as opposed to, I think that on the other side of it, as we kind of think about it from a candidate's perspective, when they hear insurance, I think that they're going to be going out and doing sales at all times, right? It's, I need to go out, build a book of business and be selling all the time. But there are so many different roles, right? You think about an account manager at an agency, right? Like you're not necessarily going out and doing that frontline selling work. You're kind of more handling client relations and doing a lot more of the servicing kind of from end to end with the clients that you have. So I think it's really just it is a nomenclature issue that we have, right? Where we need to make sure that we are describing what these types of functions are and what the actual work that you're going to be doing are to the candidates that we look to recruit, and really kind of spin it to be a more of a consultative type of job as opposed to robotic kind of process oriented type of role.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Makes me start to think about what's on our job descriptions and how we communicate that to potential recruits and
absolutely whatnot. Absolutely.
Yeah, a lot of that language is kind of stale and old, and you need to paint better pictures for the folks that are out there. And it's just doing a little research on you coming into this. It looks like you're doing a lot of that in terms of in your blogs and in kind of your development and the learning, the stuff that you put out there to folks. And I think that's probably the way, is to kind of change mindset. To invigorate the young talent out there that maybe didn't think about this as a career path. We got to get back on the map, so to speak.
Absolutely. And to that point, right, I think that, and this really goes back to that marketing issue that I think that we're challenged with, right? Whenever I recruit for roles, I don't even put insurance in the job description. Like, I say, this is a risk management role, right? You can come join a risk management program, right? Because at the end of the day, that's what we're providing, right? We are helping, whether it's individual consumers or commercial clients, manage their risk, protect their personal or their business's balance sheet. It's a very simple sell, particularly to the candidates that we're looking to recruit. So I tell them that we do risk management, but then I also tell them that I've never sold an insurance policy in my life, because I never have. Do I have aspirations one day of maybe opening up my own agency or doing something kind of down that line? Sure, but I think I say that to say that there are so many different paths that you can take in this industry, but the average person out there is always thinking that when they hear insurance, that they're going to be selling all day. And you can look at all the statistics that are out there around, the millennials and the Gen Zs attitudes towards any sales types of positions, but it's not good. So once you start seeing kind of that generational reaction to just sales and sales related types of roles, that's where I think that we really need to be careful with the way that we're marketing these jobs. And we need to be very thoughtful about the way that we put together our job descriptions, or that we really kind of market opportunities within our industry.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah. I start to think about more, education instead of sales, right? Like, not only do we need to be educating the population on risk management, but then when you're in risk management, it's much more about how are we educating our clients about potential risks. And if we do a good enough job at that, they're going to start asking you like, well, can you help me? What solutions do you have? And you're in the game then.
Exactly.
How much of this is driven by kind of I'll sum it up with this, old school nomenclature, old school mentality. How much of that's driven by the carriers? And, how do we get them to shift their mindset? Because, they're the ones on the TV on Saturdays on the Big Ten Network talking about how they're, you need to call and save a little bit of money and talk to a sales guy and whatnot, and drive that product-driven transactional message that we're trying to, push against. Like, how do we start getting them to realize that it's not all about like them?
Yeah. That's the classic, like, I feel like channel conflict, right? Particularly with the carriers that you see on the captive side, right? I think the progressives and the Allstates of the world that I at least work with independent agencies, like, they have they're coming at it from different angles. But I think that the household names that are out there, people just associate this brand with insurance, and it feels to them like something that is more of a transaction, as opposed to something that, if you're talking to an independent agent, which unfortunately a lot of consumers don't necessarily they don't know that they're like that's even an option, right? When they hear insurance, they probably think about 4 different companies. They're not thinking about going to their local independent agency to be able to get shopped across 30 different carriers, unfortunately. So I think that that's going to be a classic push and pull. I don't know if there's necessarily a remedy for that in terms of working with a Geico or a State Farm being like, hey, pump the brakes. You guys are doing our industry a disservice. Like, I wish we could, right? But I think for the carriers that are open to or are currently working with your independent agencies. I think that there's a lot of value in them, really kind of driving, particularly as we kind of think about like the momentum that is shifting towards independent agencies and the independent agency distribution channel. There is a lot of value that carriers can have in terms of helping people kind of shift their mindset around the consultative approach that you guys actually provide to them and the value that you actually provide to consumers across the country. I think that this is the most important distribution channel that we have in our industry, and it unfortunately doesn't get enough. It doesn't get enough press because everyone associates insurance with the captive. Not everyone. Your average consumer associates insurance with the captive channel. So I think that there's definitely a lot of opportunity for your carriers that work and interact pretty consistently with the independent channel to really help customers get a better understanding of the value of working with an independent advisor to really help them protect their personal assets.
Yeah, I agree. One of the things I think about that would help more than anything that would allow us to control a little bit more of our destiny is just let us strip out commissions and reduce the cost for the client and let us charge a fee for the value that we add.
Absolutely.
And let's just start there. And then let us stand on our own 2 feet in terms of the value that we can provide a client from a risk management perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And they still win and we win. But
absolutely. That's an alignment of interest too, right? Like
right.
you're
Exactly.
putting that shared skin in the game across the agency and the consumer side. So I think that there's a lot of value there.
I just feel like they would, they lose a lot of leverage by doing
exactly.
That. But
exactly,
that would be a great first step. So
completely agree.
Well, what let's focus for a couple minutes on advice that you might have for an independent agent out there listening that's struggling to find, a good risk advisor to come in and be part of the team. Like, what advice would you give them about their search, and what are a couple things that you found successful that could help?
Yeah, I think the 2-year college channel is one that we've really invested heavily in, particularly as we kind of think about the folks that are currently enrolled in 2-year institutions. Like a lot of these folks are currently working full time and looking to go back to school to really kind of consider a career change. So you have people that have work experience, typically within some type of customer facing type of role, who are looking to make a career transition. And, I know a lot of folks within the insurance industry, like there are a lot of folks that don't even have a 4-year or any type of degree that are doing great work across our industry. Right. So I think that there can be a lot more, there's a lot more receptivity on the 2-year institution side to wanting to work with more local organizations that, that are looking for local talent to be able to fill their organization. So I think that that's just one channel that, you start tapping into your community colleges. There's a bunch of military transition offices that are out there that really kind of give you that local network. And these are folks that are tied to their community, right? Like that are typically, they're not going to be the folks that, went to a 4-year institution and might come work at your agency for a year before going to work at a large insurtech or a large carrier or broker, right? Like these folks typically tend to have a little bit more loyalty to their geography as well as the companies that we work with. So I definitely think that is a currently underutilized pipeline for our industry to be tapping into. But I think also as we kind of think about the resources that are provided to folks when they first start, we know that particularly on the agency side, there's not necessarily the infrastructure that's set up to be able to train and develop folks, right? So as we kind of think about what particularly, your millennials and your Gen Zs are looking for in terms of the work that they do and the companies that they want to work with. Obviously everyone wants to get paid. Everyone wants to do something that they feel has impact, but also everyone wants to work for a company that's investing in their development and their success. So, I think that's definitely a challenge where, if you're a 20 or a 30 person agency, you're not going to be going out and hiring a head of learning and development. That doesn't make sense. That doesn't work well with your unit economics as a company, right? So I think being thoughtful about, using some type of training provider, whether, I don't want to make a huge plug for Safari, but, really investing in the development and the learning of the staff that you're actually going out there and recruiting will really drive better outcomes on the back end as it pertains to retention. So I think that's kind of the second piece. And then I think the third piece is I hear this a ton, right? And, we're focused on bringing in new talent that does not have industry expertise, but I feel like the need across our industry is for folks that have that like 3 to 10 years of experience that can kind of come in and be account managers necessarily as opposed to CSR. So, one thought that kind of pops into my head is, well, why don't we have more agencies that are creating account manager training programs, right? Where you can kind of come in, work as a CSR, a traditional CSR for maybe a year and a half. And then, before you know it, 2 years in, you've got someone that can slot into that account manager role, as opposed to spending 6 to 9 months trying to get that account manager, paying a 25% fee to your recruiting company, and, risking them leaving in a couple of years or in a couple of months, because it is such a hot market for talent that everyone's just kind of picking everyone else off from agency to agency, carrier to agency to carrier, whatever the case is. There's not enough supply of people that exist in that 3 to 10 years of experience range. And right now what that's creating is wage inflation. So we need to be able to expand the supply of talent and just think a little bit differently about it, have a bit more patience with the folks that you're looking to bring in, and really use that as a way to build a pipeline that can ultimately fill your organization moving forward.
Awesome. Those are fantastic ideas. I was listening to a podcast with Rob O'Neill a couple weeks ago, and he was discussing, how there's such a need for providing the right resources to these military professionals that are trying to transition. And you're right, their mindset's different, they're more loyal. It got me thinking about that path again, where it could be and it makes you feel good to fulfill a mission like that on our front. So
Absolutely. I mean, listen, there are 400,000 people that roll out of active duty every single year. So, that's a pipeline that we can really start tapping into on an annual basis. And, that is a nationwide network that you can really start to get into. These folks aren't all going to New York City. They're not all going to, to LA or major metropolis. They're going to your small communities where there's a huge presence of independent agencies that need that kind of talent, right? And these folks are well embedded within their community, so they could be a great fit. I know a lot of the catastrophe adjusters actually recruit a ton of folks from the military, just because there's a lot of overlap. I mean, I've been digging into the world of catastrophe adjusters a little bit over the past year. I feel like they exist in their own little universe within the insurance world. But there's a lot of overlap between some of the, I'd say, challenges doing that job compared to working in the military. So they've actually started to tap into that. And I think that the agency channel can absolutely start digging into that pipeline as well.
For sure. Well, that's awesome. I appreciate you coming on today, Jelani. And if people want to reach out and get in contact with you, how do they do that?
Yeah, so you can connect with me on LinkedIn, Jelani Fenton, and that's Jelani. I know it's not necessarily the easiest name to spell, but you can connect with me on LinkedIn. Our website is insuresafari.com, so definitely feel free to check us out online. And I'm willing and open to have a chat with anyone that's looking to I would say upgrade their existing talent programs. We work with a variety of companies across the spectrum, on the carrier side, on the broker, on the agency side, as well as with TPA. So, we're ready to help out wherever we can with this talent shortage that our industry is facing.
Awesome. Well, appreciate you coming on today and sharing your story and, fighting the good fight, trying to put this industry in a better place. So
absolutely.
Yeah, need guys like you doing what you're doing, man, because there is a huge need out there, and I think we appreciate what you're doing there at the tip of the spear, trying to get out there and bring new talent into our organizations. It's definitely needed.
Absolutely. I wouldn't call it God's work just yet, but we'll see the impact that we have. We'll have to see how that shakes out. But listen, I appreciate you both for having me on. Huge shout out to Chris over at Faro for connecting us, and really excited to continue following the growth of what you guys are putting together here with the podcast. So really appreciate it.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, John. Take care.
Thank you for tuning in to Getting Past the Premium. We are excited to continue breaking down barriers and finding solutions together. If you would like to reach out regarding anything you heard in today's episode, find links and contact info in the description. Until next time, have a great day, and let's continue getting past the premium.